Hey, it's Bob Perkins here with the AA-ISP. I'm the original founder, but more importantly than being a founder, I'm an inside sales aholic. You're listening to the Sassholes, the Revenue Ops Greatness.
Welcome to Sassholes, a show dedicated to issues within the software as a service industry. We are Revenue Ops with a edge. Jamie, Jason, KG, and Justin have a combined 100 years of making interesting decisions. Please subscribe to our weekly newsletter. More importantly, please subscribe to us on YouTube. That little click, I'm telling you, it tickles the algos, and all of a sudden, we're breaking the internet. All right, today's guest is Bob Perkins. KG.
Just pick on Justin's here. Pick on Justin, for God's sakes.
Carney. Carney.
Yeah.
What does a baby computer call his father? Data. Leave us some comments on our blog at sassholes.net. KG, we got any shout-outs?
Yeah, I got a couple of shout-outs here. Let's see here. Well, happy birthday to our buddy Lauren Bailey. She was on the show. She told a joke that made Jamie blush. So happy birthday, Lauren Bailey. And John Healy, who used to be with Lauren Bailey as I think her CRO. Happy birthday to my friend Amy Klemek, who was the chief people officer at ZipRecruiter way back when. And happy birthday to one of my former sales leaders, sales managers, George Lawrence, formerly of USAMP. And then finally, happy birthday to my baby girl, Nausicaa, who just turned 20 last Saturday. And that's it. I just got nice guy shout outs, Pete.
Nice guy shout outs.
Yeah.
Carney?
Patrick Vandy Vanderwall, he got a new job as VP of Distribution at GAC Media. Vandy is a Marquette alum, whoop, whoop, which means he's brilliant, and a local Chicago radio sports host with Dan McNeil. So I wanted to give him a shout out there. Max Morris used to work for me over at Flexera. Just got hired as People AI as an enterprise BDR. He wants to get back into sales. And then Caroline Asplund, she just got promoted to manager of Shoreline Sightseeing. I'm giving that shout out because that's where my Caroline, my oldest, works in Chicago. So if you're ever doing boats and want to see a boat cruise, go hit up Caroline Carney. Give her a call. She'll give you a deal. Drop the Sassholes name. Get 20% off. I'm just making that up.
Everybody's dropping it. Hey, Max Jansen's got promoted to Director of Sales at Cision. Way to go, kid. Beat me by 4 years. Son of a gun. Joel Cheeseman, 2 years at Pochio. Is that how you pronounce it? Pochio?
Yeah.
Tabanga Bartman for 7 years at CSC Corptex. Congratulate Adam Julian for 10 years at the Boston Red Sox. Whoa. Dave Barrett, new position as Enterprise Manager, Key Accounts at ZipRecruiter. Amy Laughlin, remember her, guys? 6 years at Paylocity. Bobby Allen, 8 years at Vision Financial Markets. And then Travis Coppins, 1 year at Upwork. Way to go, Travis. Okay. KG, who is Bob Perkins? Can you read this?
Yeah, who is Bob Perkins? Well, first of all, I like to think that Bob and I are friends, and I'm very influenced by Bob. But with over 30 years of executive leadership experience, Bob Perkins is a nationally recognized inside sales innovator who's determined to take our profession of inside sales to the next level of professionalism and performance. And back in 2006, Bob formed a vision for the future state of inside sales. No longer were we the redheaded stepchildren. That was the key there, I believe. And from that, the AA-ISP was born, the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. Having grown into a global community for like-minded inside sales professionals, the AA-ISP is our industry's leading resource for advancing sales reps, leaders, and organizations. Bob maintains a video channel, Inside Sales Studio, that discusses trends and tactics relevant to today's progressive inside sales leader involved in their organization's digital transformation. And that's all she wrote.
But before we get to Bob, we got to sponsor the show, NeuroNoodle. Hey, parents of athletes, get a doodle your noodle. That's a brain map before the season starts because, unfortunately, doink, something happens. You need a baseline to compare it to. Get a brain map now at neuronoodle.com. It takes only 10 minutes to get the data you need to have the peace of mind to keep your athlete on the field. Schedule an appointment now at neuronoodle.com. All right, Bob Perkins, inside sales. You're the man.
He's the man.
So you were in inside sales. You sold inside on the phone.
Did when we had a phone, that was it. Even when email was just becoming popular, that's all we had: a phone and a damn Rolodex. That's all you needed.
What about a fax machine?
We just coming out back then. My first phone, was a big kit like this. You lugged it in your car, but yeah, we had faxes. Yeah.
And then you had a shoebox, index cards, contact names, Glengarry, Glen Ross, your old school.
Yeah, i.e. ACT. Remember ACT?
Oh, yeah. ACT. That's right.
I was a power user of ACT. Uh-huh.
But before that, though, Bob,
Index cards.
I remember this is so insane. I am so 51 when I tell this story. I show up at my first sales job, and part of the onboarding experience was learning how to work my leads and run my accounts. Yeah. And they gave me a file cabinet that was 4 feet long. Mm-hmm. And then you had the months of the year, January through February, and then you had days of the month, and you would take your files and you would move them. This was before there was computers. That's tell let me tell you how I'm old without telling you.
I was going to say, you don't look that old, cowboy. Remember the nickname I gave you the first leadership summit was Cowboy.
It was Cowboy. Exactly.
Did he have one of those Village People hats on, or
he did? He was
coming from California. No offense.
We had the first summit in Minnesota, just outside the Great Mall of
that's right.
And I tell you what, being from California, that was freaking cold. So yeah, I had a hat on and a bunch of other stuff because it was cold.
So I got a question for you. How do you feel? Talking about what you guys are talking about here. What was the first transformation of inside sales from filing cabinet to computer? But do you have certain things that you were wow, that was when we started to actually change? Because I feel like sales hasn't, the whole process of selling hasn't changed dramatically or as drastically as other areas inside organizations. I think mainly because the other organizations, it's all about cost savings, and sales is all about revenue generation. Yeah. But I'm wondering, do you have anything, that you can sort of say, hey, here's the timeline of when things started to change?
Before my time, it was something called the Watts, WATTS, the Watts line. This goes back into the 70s. And it was when someone could make a 1-800 call. When 1-800 became mainstream, people could do business on a phone, right? They didn't have to mail in an invoice, mail in an order. I remember back in the day when I was a little kid, you got the Sears and Roebuck catalog. You had to pick your toys you were going to get for Christmas, and your dad, their mom.
No, the lingerie section.
Yeah, well, that too, right?
Come on, get out of
but yeah, no, it was the telephone. But then, everything took off after that, and still, it's like, oh, wait a minute, you're not good. You're not the person that knocks on the door, goes, shakes a hand, reads the room, and I'm the real salesperson. Well, we know who the real salespeople are today. They're the ones that can sell, right? And face-to-face, great. Remotely on Zoom, even better. I don't have to waste time traveling. But
so you were a door knocker. You did outside sales back in it.
I did. I got my start I was a school teacher. I failed terribly at that. Couldn't manage a room full of middle grade, 7th, 8th graders. Got into sales, and I liked sales, but I loved leading. And I loved leading a team. And then I went from a field sales leader manager role to something called telesales. And I called up my friend, what is telesales? He says, hey, Bob, it's everything you're doing. You just do it over the phone. I go, well, okay. It can't be that tough. And a year in, I fell in love because we were the underdogs, right? We were the bad news bears of a very large, successful, high-tech company called Unisys. And I made it my mission a year in. I go, I will prove them wrong. And 3 years in, yeah, we had fax machines and we were faxing. Orders were faxed in. We faxed out proposals. And I said, if you did this without the help of a field rep, put it on pink. And I started this campaign called Think Pink. Think Pink. And we did, I think the first quarter, $5 million. I went to the first QBR with all these, big ego field sales reps and leaders, saying, and I handed them like a stack of pink fact sheets. And I said, $5 million, no field involvement. And that was the beginning.
Remember when inside sales was frowned on? Like I was in the yellow pages, and it wasn't like the regular yellow page. It was an offshoot of the yellow pages. The fingers do the walking. They never trademark it, so anybody could do it. So you get called in the office Monday morning, 7 a.m. So the boss makes sure you're up, and then they said, "Get the hell out of the office." You couldn't schedule anything on the phone. You couldn't do anything. You just had to go out and pound doors. I'm amazed how that's transformed from going outside to inside, the efficiency of it all. And then also, I don't know if it was Intercall or whoever the conference call company, the minute that conference calls started to come in, things started to change. Is that what you remember, Bob?
Oh, totally. And you carried a briefcase when you went out on those. Yeah, of course, we all had briefcases, right? I don't know what the hell I had in them that mattered, but can you imagine that? Yeah. Well, conference calling was big. You guys are going to laugh. I was literally on an old-fashioned conference call about 2 months ago, and I'm on there and I'm listening. I'm going, what the hell do I do? And I hear beep, beep, doo-doo, doo-doo, people joining. And all of a sudden somebody led the meeting, and I go, this is chaos. How did we ever do that now that we have this?
We didn't know no better. We didn't know no better. That's for sure. Bob, how do you?
So it started with 1-800 numbers as one transformation, right? Let's
PBX. No, before that it was the PBX.
The PBX.
Because it used to be that there were only a couple of numbers inside the organization, but when organizations started to install their own PBXs, then you could call and talk to a specific person.
So PBX 1-800 numbers conference calls. Is that sort of like? I'm just trying to while we talk through this journey, is sort of timestamp that the 3 iterations during your generation is.
And fax is in there too, because that enabled you to transfer information around in real time.
And of course,
I remember that.
An email. And do you remember the flip phones? And oh my gosh, I can text somebody. Is this the coolest thing? And I remember way back when I go, we're going to be texting customers. People are like, no, never. It's personal. No, here we are.
Seriously,
guys, look, it's a matter of time. We will be doing all of this stuff on a watch. I mean, we almost are today. Yeah. And then holograms are going to come in, and but look,
let's talk about. We should talk about what hasn't changed, because all of this technology, we've all lived through the inside sales transformation. But guess what? There's still a lot of organizations where the inside sales team is viewed as junior varsity, right?
Some. It's changed a lot because we're all inside sales. Starting March 2020, everyone was inside. Period. Yeah. I mean, there was hardly any travel, maybe a little bit. But we all became inside sales. But here's the thing. It's not inside and outside. And you're right, Justin. It's not technology. One thing hasn't changed, right? Just think about your own teams over the years. How many of you had 2 or 3 just amazing salespeople, right? We all did. We had the top performers. Why? Why then and why now? How come people can't just get into the sales job and succeed? It's there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of people that barely make it to the minimum standards. Yet we think it's in technology. We think it's in metrics. We think it's in better sales training. And there's nothing wrong with all those things. They're all good. But what is it today? And I don't care if you're doing it on Zoom. I don't care if you're going face to face. What makes a great salesperson? Still a bit of a mystery today.
Well, a cynic would say, a cynic would say it's less a function of the person and more a function of the proposition. So a smart salesperson, instead of going to work for ACT, would go and work for Salesforce. Now, are they a good salesperson because they have incredible communication skills, or are they a good salesperson because they chose the right organization to go work for?
Well, you take that further though, wouldn't you say it's also territory, right? I'm going to go work for an account like Salesforce that maybe is breaking into a new area that hasn't been untapped and has these huge accounts.
But I'll challenge that a bit. You've heard this saying in golf: it's better to be lucky than good, right? Well, sure, I've had 3 hole-in-ones, right? But can I play professionally? Far from it. I got lucky on a couple of those hole-in-ones, but I'm not a great golfer over time. And the same thing holds true for sales. I mean, think of those high performers. They can go from industry to job. They can work for a shitty company, a company that's, killing it, and they still end up being high performers. What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the problems with sales is with variable comp is if you change organization, you basically go back to the baseline. And if you're clipping the ticket on your clients' transactions, you need to build up a base of clients, and then you become locked into an organization, and
Sure.
It's hard to leave.
Of course.
I mean, I've seen salespeople who will pick jobs that enable them to earn high commissions without that lock-in, and will jump from organization to organization. Yeah. And I think it's probably a combination of two things. I think they probably have good communication skills, but I think they're also talented when it comes to picking the organizations to work for.
Here's something that's bugged me about performance since I started at Unisys close to 30 years ago. And people would say, sales is a numbers game. And I couldn't disagree more with that. Here's why I say that. If it was a numbers game, couldn't anybody do it? I remember, hey, if you make enough calls, you'll have enough conversations, you'll have enough, demonstrations, you'll have enough opportunities in the funnel, and you'll get closed out. But if it was that easy, you just do the numbers and out comes the sales, and that's not really the case.
So is it a better classification, Bob? So is it a better classification, Bob, to say then that sales, not just inside sales, but sales is more of a science than it is art, but the art will never go away, because the art of having a tremendous business conversation is hard to quantify. I'm posing that as a question, and hopefully we have a cynic on the call.
Well, here's the good news. The good news is, and Kevin, you and I were talking about this before the show started, and that is AA-ISP recently merged with a company called CVI, Corporate Visions. They have a dedicated research division called B2B Decision Labs. They are doing what I call real research, not surveys, right? Not, I retire surveys and say, oh, here's what so-and-so is doing. But they're actually talking with customers, buyers. They're finding out what is that special something that produces results. And in the next year or two, we're going to, I think, peel back the onion, another couple layers on this. So maybe 2 years from now, we'll know more than we do today. But it's still been this kind of a bit of a mystery. They got to have fire in the belly. Well, of course, right? They got to be a good presenter. Sure. Right. They have to be professionally persistent. Yes. But
Isn't it like sport? Isn't it like sports? I think in hockey they talk about shots at goal, or in one sport. I follow tennis. We don't have such a thing, but but it's probabilistic, right? If you have 10 shots at goal, maybe you score on 3 of them, and that part of it's probabilistic. But if you can't play hockey, you're not going to get any. And I think it's the same in sales. There are critical skills that you have to have shots at goal. shots at goal.
The old school example from Brian Tracy is you got the guy on the street with a cup and pencils and, want to buy, want to buy, want to buy. Eventually he's going to sell all the pencils. Just the efficiency's not going to be there. All this technology that we're talking about, isn't technology supposed to help you speed up a process? So you have all these people that buy all these things. What do you call it? Tech stack. So they have all this. They have all this stuff, and then the underlying foundation of the process isn't there. Look, it's sales, okay? I like the term old school sales, okay? It's your job is to talk to as many people that have the ability to buy your product as fucking possible, okay? Everything else is bullshit, okay? That's old school sales.
Yep. Yeah. All the damn phone.
Pick up the damn right. Action.
Yeah. No, I agree. Caveat to that is totally agree with that. Caveat to that is they better be good conversations. I worked recently with a newer sales rep, and they just didn't have they didn't ask the right questions. They didn't establish rapport. They didn't make the other person feel special during the dialogue. So you certainly got to know how to navigate, right? You've all go ahead.
I call that audible ready. You need to the great sales reps out there are like the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Brady's. They call audibles at the play, right? When you're in a call and you're doing sales, if you're not audible ready, which means you don't understand what the client's looking for and you're just following a path, you're going to be less efficient.
Here's a great evidence of that. So my son, who I couldn't believe he got into sales, he had a history major, never thought he would follow my footsteps. He did inside sales, account executive. He called me about 6 years ago and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to make President's Club." I'm like, and in my mind, I'm thinking, how did you get so lucky? Did you get a big, a low hanging fruit deal? And so he invites me to club because I pay for all the golf at club. So we did. A year later, he goes, "Hey, I think I made club again." I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" And I'm thinking this guy. Yeah, he's a good kid. He's sharp, but he's not that. He can't be a good salesperson. We went on vacation up in the Finger Lakes, and he goes, I have to take a call with a client that we're working through a proposal. And he went out in the living room, and I went in the kitchen. I'm just like,
yeah.
I heard for 20 minutes. I go, holy shit. His questions were amazing. He didn't talk over the person. He did 30-40% of the talking. Right. He moved the deal to the next stage. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. When you're in the presence of a great salesperson, they just command it. They know how to move. It's like miles. They have miles of experience on them, and they know how to do it.
I mean, that's all recruiting, isn't it?
What?
The people that do the listening that aren't selfish, doesn't the recruiting take care of that? And it's all about the foundational process. I guess it's art versus science. I think we have some art people here, and I think we have some science people here, and we're going at it here. I'm on the science side.
Well, I think it's a false. No, I would say it's a false.
Oh, dichotomy. Here we go.
It's a false dichotomy. There's definitely. I mean, what Bob's saying is his son knows the terrain. Right. And there's no substitute for that. You have to know the terrain. I mean, he knows how to navigate his way around a selling conversation. You can't fake that. But it's still probabilistic.
I'm a science guy, but I do believe that depending on what product you're selling, if you're in startup sales, you could be a great salesperson, but startup is more of art than science because you need to figure out what is your message, what's going to hit home, and how are you going to sell this? And that's not really defined. But if you're at a company that's been around for 10 years like Salesforce, you know what you're selling. You could be a great sales rep there and you don't need as much art. That's more science, in my opinion.
I wish I knew what the right, blend of the two. A little evidence of science would be Steve Richard, Steve, Zach Vision. He has a story that he started for, I forget the name of the company. It was a big research firm. And he was failing. It was like at the bottom of 40 people. He didn't know what to do. He had a good work ethic. He said, I'm going to go pull my chair up to the top 2 sales reps. So he did it for like a week. He soaked it all in. He learned the language they use. He learned how they opened a call. He learned how they overcame objections, and he modeled that. So to me, that's, maybe a little bit of art in there, but there's also quite a bit of science to that. How do you ask a question? How do you move something forward? And he moved to the top within a year. He was in the top 10%, and he credits modeling success by observing it and modeling it. So,
well, let's go for the throat right out of the gate, Bob.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on scripts?
Well, let's talk about good performance by people that have to perform and do well and know what to say and how to say it, and that's an actor or an actress, right? They are very much scripted. They call audibles. So I believe that you need to be comfortable, confident, prepared where the meeting's going, but certainly, I like to call it an outline, a call guide, versus, for sure, you don't want to read off a piece of paper because it's going to sound like you're reading off a piece of paper. But I think it's very important that you have an objective for the call, that you know how to set up a call. And some of those things are going to be, here's the agenda outline. Well, you need to have an agenda, right? We all agree with that, to move a call in the right direction. You need to have next steps in mind. So I have no problems at all with scripts, providing it's not you're reading something off a piece of paper.
Yeah. Justin, when you set up, when you consult with clients, do you establish standards of how a call is supposed to run?
Yeah, so we're huge advocates of scripts and huge advocates of role playing, but we don't try and script the whole interaction. So we script pivotal sequences, and then the salesperson can glue them together. But the initial call to a stranger absolutely has to be scripted. Every salesperson has a script, whether they recognize it or not.
Yeah,
it's just most of them are pretty shitty. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the same person being interviewed on 2 or 3 podcasts, you realize we all have scripts. We all say the same thing over and over again.
We got a script. We're not using it. Right.
Yeah, well, hey guys, if I could come back with a follow-up question to all of us here. And we have something at AA-ISP called the CISP, Certified Inside Sales Professional. And every final exam is a role play by a third-party grader. And they have an outline of how they earn points, introduction, overcoming objection, open-ended question, confirming questions, all that. And time again, they earn points for doing it well. They earn no points for pitching. So if they find a pain point, I listened to one this morning, our computers have too much downtime. We need a higher reliability product. The minute they found that pain point, what did the rep do? Said, well, I'd like to share with you that our computers just won a Gartner Award. No. And I'm like, you absolute idiot. But tell me, why do we think as salespeople, we have to tell?
I could tell you exactly. I could tell you this is, I feel so passionate about this, Bob, and I'd love to hear what the other people on the call say. Sandler calls this spilling your candy in the lobby, but it's a natural learned behavior over time. Justin, you're in class, you're at university, and the professor calls on you and says, Justin, can you give me the square root of 64? And you're like, it's 8. And you get points for responding quickly to the answer to the question. And we've been trained to respond quickly. Otherwise, you're a doofus if you sit there and you don't answer quickly. And so that, like I said, Sandler calls that spilling your candy in the lobby, because you just can't wait to start telling them all about your stuff. But the great salespeople say, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. We used to call it throwing spaghetti at the wall. So, if you chuck enough, some will stick. And
I think they're so used to objection overhandling that once they hear something that they can respond they jump at it rather than just put it in your back pocket and get more discovery. And figure out if that pain point is really what they
Wait, hold on. We're talking about different levels of reps here, right? Because you can say, tell me more, and they never fucking try to close them, right? And they say, okay, thanks for talking, goodbye. right? So don't you got to kind of marry the two?
Yes, if you're trying to close something for $100 or $500 or something like that, you could probably close it. But you're trying to sell something for a couple hundred.
Yeah, but if you're a new rep, that's what you're doing.
Well, actually, Pete has a point. There's this misconception that you start a selling conversation by asking questions. And that's true for a lot of interactions, because most of salespeople's interactions are in response to an inbound inquiry. And if that's the case, you can start by asking questions. But if you stop someone in the street or interrupted someone on the telephone and you want to ask them questions, in order to ask questions, you have to have a mandate. And in order for them to award you a mandate to ask questions, you've got to lead with some compelling proposition. But you need like a sentence or two, and then you need the person you're talking to scratch their chin and go, As much as I don't want to talk to a salesperson, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask this prick a question because he just said something that made me think.
I get it. If it's a 1.5-year sales cycle, I'm just talking about the situation where you start the call off where if we both agree that there's a fit, I will be asking for your business to set the expectations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nothing wrong with that, though.
Different sales cycles. Yeah.
I think, Bob, I don't know about you, but like, I think all of those things can still exist that, that Justin talked about and that Pete talked about. I think that the absence of questions and absence of deeper level questions is a huge problem continually, in sales, whether you're selling something that's $100 or $100,000. I think that problem still exists. And Justin, to your point, I think they call, the challenger sale calls it those aha moments, those learning moments. You got to earn the right to be in front of the customer to then be able to ask those questions. And if you don't come to the table with something that's insightful, like you said, they have that aha moment or that light bulb over their head type of moment, there's no way that they're going to allow you to sit there for the Spanish Inquisition of questions.
Yeah. I think one thing you can't fake is you need to know more than your prospect about the particular domain. There's no way to fake that. Yeah, and I think a problem a lot of junior salespeople have is it's obvious to them and to the prospect that they don't know more. I mean, if you know more, you can be comfortable and you can say to the prospect, why would you take that position? Are you sure that's true? And if you're a junior salesperson who doesn't quite understand the domain, there's no way that you're going to ask that question.
This is wonderful. I would dare say that what you just said is this secret, sauce that great salespeople have. I'll give you a good example. Brand new pediatrician, our son, when he was 2 years old, was not gaining weight. This pediatrician, great guy and all that, but said, hey, we got to do this test. We got to do that test. We have to go here, here, here. Was this close to admitting him into the hospital for just observation, this and that. So I said, my older son's had a pediatrician. He's about ready to retire. And I called him up and I said, Doc, so-and-so, here's the situation. We've tried this, tried that. And he paused for a minute and goes, have you given him a bottle of formula? And I go, no. He goes, go try that. Done. So my wife at the time wasn't producing enough milk, right? And so I get on the calls all the time with members that say, hey, I have a question about compensation plan. And they'll go on and on and on and tell me about this and that. And I go, well, let me ask you a question. So I kind of knew the answer because I've been doing comp plans my entire life. Let me ask you a question. Did the product management team want a spiff on this newly released product to help move it? They go, that's exactly what it was. Right. So, Justin, I really like your point on that piece, but how do you get there? A new salesperson takes a while to get there. You can't walk in and know everything, right?
Yeah, so we go into clients and build inside sales teams from scratch. We're generally building the first inside sales team they ever have. So we want the new salesperson to learn their way into the role, one campaign at a time. So we'll start off by teaching them the script to get the conversation started until they're buttery smooth. But in that initial interaction, all they're trying to do is schedule an 8-minute briefing. But they're not going to do the 8-minute briefing. We're going to have a senior person do the 8-minute briefing, and they're going to conference in. And probably all they're going to do is schedule the next conversation in the flow, and until they gradually get to the point where they're capable. They've sat in on 20 8-minute briefings. They've heard all of the questions that get asked. They're confident that they can do them themselves. So they'll do the 8-minute briefing, but they won't do the executive briefing. Someone else will do that, and then we'll let them take over one step at a time until they're competent.
We're getting back.
Otherwise, they just get incinerated. If you have them trying to have a conversation they're not qualified to have, they're just going to be incinerated, and you'll potentially lose folks that have potential to be decent salespeople.
We're getting back into technology and process and efficiency, because the new people, when they come on board, they're not really selling a product, they're selling time, right? They're trying to get somebody to set an appointment for somebody else to, come talk to them. And Justin, you and I have gone head to head on, well, I don't want a new person talking to a new customer. When did these BDRs come into play? They've always been around. Just think, Reco and Boiler Room and
Yeah.
When did that process come into place, and how did that affect inside sales, Bob?
You mean, when did it become fashionable again?
Yeah, fashionable. Yeah, old school.
What's old is new again. The role has been around for as long, maybe even longer than traditional quota carrying full cycle inside salespeople. Maybe, I don't know. But, my 30 years ago back at Unisys, we had business development, and they were trying to find new company people contacts that had interest, moving that out to the field sales rep. Well, I think it became, it started getting hot again, probably around 2000. I'm going to just take a guess at this, 12, 13, 14. It really started peaking around then. And remember we were really big on this role diversification, right? And there were a lot of movements out there. Hey, do not have a salesperson wasting their time cold calling, because they really want to demo, propose and close. Kevin, you're shaking your head. I mean, you've seen all that. And is this good? Is this a good thing? Lately, there's questioning, is there a good ROI on the BDR SDR role?
Yeah, so I would say to you that there are conditions under which the appointment setters work, and some where it does not. At ZipRecruiter, we built five SDR, BDR teams, and only one of them ended up working, and that was because the deal size was $50,000, a year. But all the other ones were, too small, where we couldn't get the conversion rates up, or the deal velocity up, or the deal size up to justify the incremental expense of the BDR. Like, look, this is a marketing function. There's no question about it. I want to generate MQLs or SQLs for my team, and adding that human expense, loaded or unloaded, whatever you want to do, it doesn't always work. But I think that people think it's a panacea, that it is a solution for everything. We got to build a BDR SDR team. Well, why don't you step back and ask yourself, does it make sense to build an SDR and or BDR team? At least that's my experience.
There are more ways to do division of labor than one, and there's a practical problem with this SDR or BDR idea, and that is that you end up creating a job that no one wants. And the problem is, if all you do is start conversations and then pass them off to someone else that's finishing them, you get all the pain and none of the pleasure. You don't get, with sales, the challenge is there's delayed gratification. But if you with the SDR role, there's no gratification whatsoever. So when I say that we will have the salesperson schedule a briefing, they never hand the opportunity off to someone else. They own the opportunity all the way through to the end, and they get to ring the bell themselves. Even if all they did was on day one, all they've done is schedule conversations for someone else to have, it's still their deal. They still win it. They still get to win the bell and go home and tell their significant other that they won a $10 million deal.
Are they on that 8-minute call with the?
Yep.
Yep.
They're on Zoom along with the Let's say we have an application engineer who runs the call because they don't have experience, or we have an experienced salesperson maybe. In some cases there'll be an experienced salesperson and there'll be an application engineer on that call. They're on every call. It's their deal. The minute you take the deal away from the person, you create a job that no one wants. And when you have a job that no one wants, you end up with a rapid reduction in the quality of the SDRs.
Right.
So now you've got annoying 22-year-old nincompoops, and you're back to the boiler room model.
I agree. I mean, I think BDRs and SDRs are overused right now. Everyone has them. Everyone needs.
Hey, Mr. Revenue, Carney, like, how do you, when you put a sales plan together, is it a pain in the ass to go explain how you're going to have these people that carry no quota? You know what I mean? In front of a board, it's like, how do you do that?
If you understand the value of a qualified opportunity, it's easy to model that shit. Trust me.
Very easy to model, and it's actually cheaper. The argument you always do from a financial perspective is acquisition through a BDR is cheaper than acquisition through an enterprise sales rep. So therefore, it's a no-brainer that the financial guys are all going to say, go do a BDR SDR. That's the incentive. That's why everyone does a BDR SDR, is because they think it's cheaper acquisition. At the end of the day, there's a lot of BDR SDRs that may be acquiring connections at a cheaper rate, but it goes nowhere because the handoff, the problem with that silo between the handoff, they're not connecting with the right people, but they're just getting a higher score.
Well, when you're doing a BDR, the whole point of doing a BDR is you can acquire a new client cheaper than you can with just spending marketing dollars, right?
Agreed. But the problem is, no matter what you're going to say, it's cheaper. It's really hard. It's really hard to say this BDR did this, because especially with the long sales cycle of like anything over, a month, it's really hard to say, did the BDR really contribute?
Isn't the assumption that you get a better return on your more expensive sales exec?
Yeah, exactly. It's an efficiency play. I agree with Justin there.
So the fallacy here is the idea that people make money as opposed to activities making money. And you don't see the same mistake made in manufacturing. No, everyone in manufacturing understands that if you employ a welder, it's not the welder that makes money, it's the welds. So a welder is only valuable to the extent that they're welding. Now, a salesperson, their unit of value isn't welding, obviously, it's having selling conversations. But if we talked about how do we maximize the volume of selling conversations, or how do we equate cost with selling conversations, I think the argument for BDR would diminish very, very quickly. We don't want to maximize the return on a sales executive's time. We want to maximize the volume of selling conversations we can have per dollar.
Yeah, agreed.
100% agree.
Yeah, no. So Bob, I would love for you to tell our listeners about the AA-ISP. What is the AA-ISP? What do members get out of it? And for God's sakes, please tell us about the AA-ISP Leadership Summit. I love that summit. So tell us all about it.
Well, we're a global community, right? Like-minded. We're largely made up of leadership ranks, although we have a lot of SDR, BDR, sales executives, several thousand. But many of the events that most of the events we put on are based for leadership. The Leadership Summit, Kevin, which you came to in 2009, it was I think April 2009, just outside the Mall of America. We had 50 people. Back in 2019, our last one before the pandemic, we had 850 people and a lot of global attendance. By the way, listeners may not know this. We just actually had our Leadership Summit a few weeks ago in Chicago. It's every year we put it in Chicago. We'll be back there in April of 23. And we had 500 people show up, even on the tail end of the latest variant of the COVID. And we have a retreat coming up in May, an executive retreat. Who's who of Kevin? Have you been to a retreat? I don't know if you've been to. You might
never could get my company to pay for the retreat.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I'll put it out there. You come next time, it's on me. How's that? Because you got to get to a retreat. It's my favorite. It's executives coming together and doing what we just did here, digging into, hey,
I love it.
How do you model an SDR? What about scripting? We dig into it deep.
Love it.
Listen, if you want to know what's catapulting sales, I got to say sales now more than I say inside sales, because I think we're on the verge of a sales enlightenment. I really do. And, it's gratifying to have the AISP sort of play a little bit of an instigating piece in that, is what we did, right? We brought in thought leaderships. We beat it out. We figure it out. And, but I think we got the opportunity to be on a cusp of an evolution, a transformation of sales. Let's get back to serving the customer, to listening skills, to, I like what Justin said about knowing more than the customer. It's not always going to be possible, but know enough to be a thought leadership, to add some value to that conversation. That's what selling is. I mean, just picture this. Think of the last interaction you had when you bought something and you were like, my gosh, this salesperson gets it. They know exactly what I'm going through. That's what selling is, more than it is making 60 calls to get, 5 people to take a meeting. Now you got to do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's got to be under this framework of what I just described. Anyways, AISP, get out to our website, www.aaisp.org. As I mentioned earlier, we just merged with CVI and B2B Decision Labs. I couldn't be more excited because there were 10 of us trying to solve a lot of stuff. Well, B2B Decision Labs is going to bring support, research, and thought leadership to the community of inside sales professionals. And you know what? Let's just call it what it is. Sales is sales is sales, right? And I think it's great to work on Zoom. It's great to go out and meet people. I meet clients of AISP face to face, and there's nothing like it. So it's great too. But sales is sales. Let's be in this together.
Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It was great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Souls. On behalf of Jamie, KG, Justin, and myself, Pete, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our newsletter and the podcast notes. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. That little click, I'm telling you, that sets in motion the wonders of the algorithms. You can always buy us a beer on Patreon/SaaS Souls. We thank you for listening. Cue the music.